Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me once again Michael Hyson. Michael, good to have you back on.
It's good to be back.
All right, man. Always good having you on. We always have some good conversations. Today we're going to be talking about The Inner Temple of Witchcraft by Christopher Penczak, and he's got his version right there. I'm looking forward to this because I think in starting this book, I think that it's considering the introduction, the first few, maybe 3-4 chapters, whatever, it's got a very, very good background and foundation of the history of witchcraft to where anyone can build on. Would you agree with that?
I do. It's one of those books that the author has many years of experience. He's well read. He's well experienced. Mm-hmm. He's one of the go-tos that I actually referred my clients to.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of people who, some people who message me and say, hey, I want to get into witchcraft, where I start. Sometimes I say, start with this book. It's, like I said, great foundation. But I also like the fact that it has, it's structured like a class. So it's structured to where it has lessons and then it has exercises. And to make sure you absorb the information before you go to the next lesson. I like that about this book. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's one of the best well-written books out there, namely because of the fact that the author, Christopher himself, he teaches up and down the Eastern Seaboard. Mm-hmm. He does lectures and everything. So when you get into these books and find out that it's structured like a class, it really is coming from a teacher, not just a practitioner. And so I have to agree with you.
Yeah, and a lot of times with witchcraft and occult books in general, some of it is rehashed content. They tell you the same information. They throw a few new things in there to kind of keep you happy. But this has a lot of stuff that is not in a lot of other books, and I think a lot of stuff that people overlook. But yeah, man, let's go ahead and jump into it. So
that's one thing I can say.
Yeah, I love it.
It's not regurgitated material. It's fresh, it's original, and it's literally based off actual practices.
Yeah, this is the real deal. This is what you need to get started in witchcraft if you're interested in that subject. So now I noticed that we have different versions. So let's see, go to page 30, and it's actually in chapter 2. Okay, so now let's go to the middle of the first paragraph here, and I'm not sure if it's we'll see if it's got the same wording. So it says, the devil held no place in the pre-Christian pagan myths because ancient pagans did not recognize the source of ultimate evil. They recognized the forces of creation manifested in nature. Now, I think that that's kind of something that we need to get back to the roots of nowadays, especially with the three big religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Yep. They tend to focus on the extreme, one way or another, and not trying to find balance and common ground in things. What do you think?
Well, if you actually look at the image of the devil, for an example, and I know you know this as well, is where they got their roots from of the proto-cultures. You've got Pan, the half man, half goat, for an example, nature god, right?
Right.
And then you have, that's in Greek mythology. You go down into Egyptian and you have Set. Okay. Go into Norse and you have Loki. They basically have taken the devil from various different religions and made it their own. And that's a corrupted version of it because they didn't get the entire story. They didn't get what they were about. And I have no doubt that we need to get back to the original practices.
Yeah.
And
I mean, well, especially the fact that a lot of cultures, you know, their concept of the devil, quote unquote, sometimes is beneficial to mankind the way they see it. I mean,
Right.
You know, sometimes things are the same in cultures, and people think that their culture thinks it's good to confuse and mix things up for variety, and that's what the devil's role is in some cultures. You know, so it's seen kind of as a good thing and not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But yeah, it seems to me the modern day devil that's been created by the Christian church is just a method of control for the common people.
It's a fear tactic, nothing more.
Yeah, that's all it is. That is all it is. And yeah, let's go to page 37. And so the first paragraph that is on that page, bottom of it, it says, Murray was correct in the fact that the wise ones were the spiritual descendants of the ancient goddess cults and mystery traditions, if not physically linked. Now, here's a guy that says, you know, well, yeah, in some of these lore and traditions, it's talking about gods and goddesses, their blood being you know, as far as being physically linked with humans, they kind of shy away from it. You know, oh, that's just hearsay. Here's a guy that says, hey, that's probably true. You know, and I think so too. You know, the more that you get into this stuff, the more you realize that I think that at one time the gods and goddesses, and probably still today, do have a physical presence among us. What do you think?
That they do. And if people actually took the time to understand the ancient practices. For an example, let's take talk Egyptian gods right for just a second.
Okay.
You have Anubis, right?
Yeah.
The jackal-headed god of the underworld. He is known and renowned for having a human heart and a feather. Okay. Whereas Osiris had the gold versus the feather, right? On the scale of judgment. When you look at your iniquity or the way you live your life, there's definitely a thing of balance, you know, karma, balance, Murphy's Law, whatever you want to call it. It is renowned throughout the old world. Even if you get into, say, for an example, let's go to Greek mythology, go into Hades, okay? You have that of Hecate, for an example, who's renowned for having hellhounds, right? A lot of people don't realize, especially in today's world, just the resonance with a canine in general. You look at how many's on TV talking about, oh, the hellhound did this or werewolf did this, you know, the wolf dogs, if you will.
Yeah.
People today are so afraid, they don't even want anything to do with dogs. Okay? I have 4 huskies. Okay? 4 huskies. Love them.
Right.
They're outgoing just like me. But the point is that when you actually take the time to understand the nature of the deities and what they represent with those particular animals, consider it animal totems, for an example. Bastet, an Egyptian, had cats, guardians of the underworld. In Egyptian, or in Greek rather, you have Hecate with the hellhounds. Now, what were they used for? Protection while doing rituals, protecting various different treasures, locations, but they were also sent after to bring people to them, especially through hauntings. Look at them. You know, you got the black dogs, the myth through the truckers. You have the Egyptian, not the Egyptian, but the Welsh, London, for an example, the mythos of the black dog with the red eyes and the mists. I forget the name of the town that story was on.
Yeah, and then there's also a lot of people in the United States or in the Western world that say, oh, well, when the devil comes to you, he comes in the form of a dog. You know, there's a lot of people that say that.
And then you look at the depictions within the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, same thing with the goats. But yet people forget that that scapegoat was originally part of a Jewish custom known as Yip Kippur. So,
yeah, you'll see that there's not. I mean, things are not as surprising as they may seem. Oh, it depends on the situation, actually.
right.
But like attracts like. And you
Mhm.
dig into this symbolism and you see that there's a common theme among, and you begin to notice patterns.
Correct.
But yeah,
and that's the thing. You can put the name evil behind anything. You know, same thing with the word Satanist or
yeah.
Satanism.
I mean,
Satanic this. You can do that all day long, but it doesn't make it evil. It does not make it
with
right.
enough with enough repetitiveness, people will start to believe whatever's being thrown around. I mean, look at the modern day Christian symbol. It's a symbol of death that they look toward, a man being tortured to death on a cross, and they see that as a holy symbol. So it's like, oh, I worship this symbol, when really they're saying they worship life. It's a symbol of death. That is very, very true. Very, very true. And yeah, let's go now to page. Let's go to page 46.
The Wheel of the Year.
Yeah, this kind of ties into what we were just talking about. So it's going to be the third paragraph down middle of it. It says, an ultimate evil and an ultimate good is a polarity never found in nature. In Christian myths, God is all powerful, but the devil still exists. For this to be a true polarity, they must be equal to each other. But in Christian mythology, they are not. Again, we had just discussed that. Now, if you go to the very bottom, in the bottom paragraph, second sentence, it says, black is appropriate for ritual because it is a dark goddess color and it attracts energy. Rituals are celebrated at night for the same reasons, though many take place during the day as well, depending on the tradition. And I think that that's one thing that witchcraft in itself has embraced, and there is great advantages in wearing black. Would you agree?
There is. I mean, black fits with everything from the priesthood to funerals to ministry. More so when you're dealing with ritualistic rites and everything. Let's look at a rite known as the Sin Eater, just out of an example. The Sin Eater in folklore is kind of like an old wives' tale, if you will. And the last one was reported around 1904, I think, if I remember correctly, where this person would come in, they're like the grave digger, they're like the mortician, they're like the priest, the funeral home director, whatever. They would come in and eat the Last Supper, right? Just like out of the biblical story, the Last Supper. But in this case, you're taking all that person's sin into yourself, therefore making yourself vile. You look at witchcraft in general of the past. Think about it. Why was the African traditions and tribal, a witch or a warlock would be placed right next to the tribal chief? But yet when you get into European traditions, they're either on the outskirts, like the shamans, or they're way out in the boondocks, like Baba Yaga. Considered vile, monstrous. Wow, really? So yeah, black is seen as a spectrum of color, not something that's good or evil. It is something that is neutral.
Definitely.
At least in my experience.
As common as it is, to man, I think it's actually it seems to be more common than light actually is. I mean, look at in outer space, we're surrounded by darkness. You know what I mean? You go to the bottom of the ocean, you go deep, there's darkness. There's, and especially, at this time of the year, most of the most of the day is attributed to darkness. But it's like that for a reason. It's something common to us and something we can take advantage of, especially in our spiritual work.
Yep. That's one thing I have.
No need to fear it.
And shamanism down in South America, They actually go into caves where it's completely solitude. It's black in there. All you have is a candle flame.
Mm-hmm.
Depiction, drawing.
Yeah, I find that rituals tend to be more effective when I'm in the dark. It allows me to concentrate better. There's a reason that when Christians, when they pray, they say close your eyes. You know, it's all about they're trying to focus on the focus and intent of what they want to, the energy that they want to send out. Now, whether Christians want to admit that or not, they're taking a page from this book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Islam would go at certain intervals throughout the day and prostrate themselves. They would therefore getting into what is called a routine.
Mm-hmm.
In Jewish custom, or let's go with Hebrewism, it was always about the code or the creed, if you will, the 10 Commandments, abiding by them. And it was basically like the book of the law, put forth by Aleister Crowley, if you will, but more in the Christianized sense. Where every time you go into, say, for an example, an apostolic church or a Pentecostal, they'll always tell you, take it to the altar. It's between you and that being, right?
Right.
When you go into, as a black magician, a warlock or a witch, you go into your temple, which is mine's right there. You go into pitch black. Therefore, immediately you're leaving the physical realm and going into your spiritual nexus. Okay. You meditate before lighting that one single candle before you begin your vision quest or whatever ritual or rite you're doing. Black is reflective. It's isolated.
Yeah, very well said. Now let's go over to page 67. And this is going to be the fourth paragraph down. And this says, the most important quality of the witch is a healthy dose of love for life. You must seek to enjoy the pleasures of life on all levels. A key to such enjoyment is a good sense of humor. Laughter is the best form of magic. Witches who can't laugh at themselves are taking things a bit too seriously. The world is a place of wonder and magic. Be focused on your task, but not so focused that you do not enjoy the ride. I think sometimes it's good to kind of get it out and partake in some entertainment of some kind. Don't go around thinking about the ritual that you just done and say, is it going to work? Is it going to work? As long as you're not attached to the outcome, it will happen.
Correct.
That's why, and also it's good to just kind of unplug from time to time, just kind of, I don't know, go to a movie, go do something, it's not good to be locked up in your house when you have, every time you have free time and just be, in these books and, thinking about magic constantly. Yes, you are to be magic, but, give your mind a break from it from time to time to kind of ease things off.
I'll give you a couple examples.
Yeah.
In the Celtic Golden Dawn system, it's called a year and a day. A year to study, practice, and everything, and then you take a day to reflect over the past year.
Yeah.
Okay. Prime example, it's called reflection, right? Now, let's go into a different thing. Let's say, for an example, you do a spell for someone. Okay, let's say you're hired by a client to do a ritual.
Okay. Now,
a lot of times, I don't know about you, but in my experience, they always come, well, when's it going to set in? When's it going to do this? When's it going to do that? They always want it on their time. And you have to remind them that it's not about you. It's about that individual and their character, if you will. The thickness of their skull, if you will, in a manner of speaking. Everybody is affected in different ways. And if you don't take a step back to just take note of the changes, you're not going to see them. It's the same thing. It's one of the reasons why we are constantly keeping journals, why we're keeping a dream journal or a regular daily journal. So we can jot down everything, keep records of everything that we're doing and kind of reflect over it.
Yeah.
And That way, when you do a rite or a ritual, you're not going to sit there and be obsessed over it.
Yeah,
because it's not going to do any good.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were talking about. If you're not so attached
Mhm.
to the end result, it will happen. I mean, when you do things like that, you keep a journal, and then maybe a couple days from there, maybe another different time, but it will manifest, and you'll think, aha, wait a minute.
Yep.
And if you want to build on that, you can go back to your notes and say, okay, I did it on this day. This was the astrological alignment. This was okay. Now I get as to what works for me, because see, the thing about magic that a lot of people don't grasp when they start is that it's not the same for everybody. It's very, very subjective to your situation. Yes.
Psychic
Development.
development. Okay. Magic, meditation, and psychic development. Psychic development is a prime example here. And like you were just saying, I'm going to use this as an example.
Mm.
When I first started working at Duncan, the first time around,
Right.
This was about 9 years ago.
Okay.
I had this guy come through my window. Okay. About 4 years before I had come to Maine. And I had met this guy downtown. And I had mentioned something to him. And he blew me off. He did not expect that it would manifest, right? Well, here's the thing. Here I am working the window. He comes through with his wife and kid. He says, "Do you remember me?" I go, "Yeah. 4 years ago, downtown." I'm not going to mention the place out of respect, but I told him that he would end up with a child and a wife. Okay.
Yeah.
So he didn't take it seriously. And then all of a sudden, here he is 4 years later with that. So
Yeah.
that is magic being manifested. But when you think of psychic development, a lot of people use that as a form of mediumship. They don't break it down into individual practices, such as being an empath, working on reading people's emotions, reading people's minds, seeing auras, being a seer and being able to see spirits. The thing I like about Christopher Penziak's perspective on this is when you're so focused on an objective or an outcome, you're not going to see it. But if you take that time to develop your abilities, your skill set, you're focused on improving yourself, but also taking time for self-care, which you and I both know is a good thing, especially with cleansings.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, you're going to see those signs, and all of a sudden, you're going to think back, as you said, going, "Wait a minute, 4 years ago, so-and-so said I was going to do this."
Yeah, the thing about spell work and timing is that unless during the spell you say, "I want this and that to happen by this time," which should be reasonable. Unless you set a time limit on your spell, it is going to happen. Now, that could be 3 days from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, or 3 years from now, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good to take notes so you can go back and kind of troubleshoot, by trial and error and see what worked, what doesn't for you. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And let's go over to, okay, first of all, let's go to page 79. We're going to talk about the 3 minds, and I'm going to show this graph because this is worth noting. Now, for those of you who don't have this book with you, this right here, this is the 3 minds right here. I'm not sure if you can see it on mine. You see a glimpse of it right there. But yeah, go ahead and hold it up right there to the camera. So yeah, so you have the conscious mind, which is the middle self, the psychic mind, which is the lower self, and the divine mind, which is the higher self, and they all interconnect. And a lot of books tend to mention the divine mind, the higher self, but they don't put a lot of focus on the lower self and the middle self, and we're going to get into that right now. If you turn the following page, page 80, bottom paragraph, it's the last sentence to where it goes into the next page. It says, the higher self can see where we've been and where we are headed. Like the lower self, it is not bound by linear time. In fact, it is simultaneously aware of all things and times. Because the conscious mind would have difficulty processing so much information, our divine self gives us information in small bursts of insights, epiphanies, and revelations. Or the higher self can use the lower self, the psychic mind, to relay a message which takes shape as a dream, symbol, or a flash of intuition. And then on the following paragraph, it says, in modern American Huna traditions inspired by Hawaiian spirituality, the lower self is believed to take the raw material it is given from the thoughts, words, and actions of the conscious self. When we sleep, the lower self brings these raw building blocks to the higher self, which then creates our life. We do this continuously throughout our life. And we do this continuously throughout our life.
Yep.
You know, especially, you know, when we dream. What do you think?
Dreams. I'm going to bring up another book by him, which is the next book on the list, because that's actually the Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually expands on this one notion right here.
Yeah.
Okay. And he breaks the brain down in different levels. Like from the front to the back, you got 3 sections, and then from the top down, you have 7. Okay. So if you take this imagery,
mm-hmm.
you have your conscious and your unconscious mind. So let's say, for an example, you have a lot of pain in your background. Okay. A lot of times your daily pain, it's something that's not going to build up in an instance, but you push it to the back of your mind and it builds up to the point where you explode, right? Anger, depression, mood swings, irritability, whatever. But let's say, for an example, you want to do it in a dream state. You want to focus on a ritual or a rite where you are going to be able to concentrate on that particular outcome. That would be your unconscious mind state. Okay. That is a lot of times the best time for you to get into that best quality of dream would be during the dream, the Z state of mind, if you will. It's the best the best area of sleep you can get.
Mm-hmm.
But it's your dreams that reveal things that you missed in your consciousness, your waking moments. This particular instance, whatever you've done throughout the day, or let's say, for example, over the year, is coming out in your dream. That's why you keep a dream journal. You may not remember all of it, but you got enough that you can actually write it down.
Yeah, and then also the fact that the mind, the subconscious mind, speaks in symbols. So that's very important when you see that in dreams. And you don't necessarily have to go with a dream dictionary, because me personally, I don't believe the symbols are the same in a dream dictionary for every person, because everyone comes from a different walk of life and a different upbringing. So some of those symbols might mean something different to them. But pay attention close to the symbols, because that's the language the subconscious mind is speaking to you.
And it may even be in reverse as well. What you're appearing as one side, it could be the opposite side that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. Like an R, let's say, for an example, an S can actually be the number 3.
Yeah.
Just add an example. That's the thing. It's like a mirror world.
And again, it goes back to the fact that magic is not the same for everybody. You can't take one grimoire or one method of doing magic in a book and it's going to apply the same to everybody. No. And one of those reasons is that, everybody is a different sign. Everyone has different moon signs, rising signs, sun signs. Everyone's their own unique individual personalities, etc.
Correct.
So therefore, the energy work is going to be different. Now, some people will specialize in certain things more than other people, but it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I can tell you is I've had dreams where certain things have come to fruition, other things haven't. But it's interesting that when you see certain things, like say you're in a room talking to somebody, you see them, their hands moving, they're speaking, right down to the color of their skin, to say, for an example, the outfit that they're wearing. You're viewing, like, say, a pulpit in the background, chairs all over the place,
right?
The folding kind. And then here you are, say, 5-6 months down the road, you end up in a homeless shelter, out of an example, and they set up for a ministry session, and there's that guy that you dreamed of, and he's doing the same. You're talking to him, and it's just like in that vision. And you're like, wait,
exactly.
I thought it's like
you will come across that. I mean, it's like I was saying a couple days ago on a video with Guion. I was saying that like, take for instance, when you do a tarot card reading, the cards already know what you're going to ask before you ask it. That's why they fall accordingly. And then the zodiac,
the cards read your essence. That's why
they do. And also you'll notice the zodiac knows what you're going to do before you do it. So when you have a spell laid out and you do it, and then you go look at the astrological alignments, you'll say, wait a minute, this was meant exactly for this day, but there's no coincidence that this led up to this for this to happen. As long as you're in alignment with your higher self, with your true will, with what your task is to do on this earth while you're here,
the alpha
speaking, everything will fall into place.
Yeah, the alpha state.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So let's go ahead and move on to. Let's go to page 108. This is in page 108, chapter 6. So we're going to go to the bottom of the second paragraph here, or third paragraph, I should say, where it says inner visualization. Bottom, it says general or universal symbols falling into the realm of archetypes is how the collective unconscious speaks to humanity, like we were saying before. Then at the very, very bottom paragraph, it says visualization is a very effective and quick method of altering your consciousness. The advantage of this method is that your psychic muscles are activated and warmed up from the process and will function more effectively in deeper meditations. Visualization is very, very important. I think it's often sometimes people tend to overlook, because it's not a bad thing to be a daydreamer. I mean, those people who they have a short attention span, their mind just goes off. That means they are very, very powerful, but they just don't even know it,
It's like being autistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're smarter than people give them credit for.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And
one can have a knack for numerology.
Well, not only that, but just the simple fact that what you focus on comes into existence the more you focus on it.
Exactly. And depending on the meditation state, the level, and what your aim is, there's a number of different things that you can do.
Well, I mean, especially those people who just worry constantly. There's those people that they have bad things happening to them. And I know this has been mentioned in previous videos, but people who are constantly they're focused on a bad thought. What if? Oh no, this is going to happen. And they get themselves so worked up to where they start shaking. If they just reverse that, they could turn their life completely around.
Exactly. They got
to realize that. Yeah. There's really they're working on the astral plane very effectively, but they don't know how.
Right.
Yeah, and the astral plane, of course, reflects back what's on the physical.
That's why certain breathing techniques are recommended. I mean, look at Buddhism, look at Shaolin practices.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Zen. Necromancy, for an example. Look at those that just in it for, say, shamanism. In this, a simple breathing exercise, let's say seconds for negativity, to bring yourself back into balance. If you're out of balance due to so much positivity, you can do 5-second breathing techniques to bring yourself back to balance.
Yeah, and they do work very good.
Yeah, you can use mantras, whispers, if you will, some certain phrases that help you to focus and channel all that anxiety and bring yourself back into balance. Like doing a banishing, just through words and channeling it of energy.
Now, on the following page where it says the screen of your mind, bottom paragraph, I'm going to read this paragraph. It says, in occultism, the idea of the screen of your mind was later translated to the portal between the pillars of the mythic First Temple in Jerusalem, also known as the Temple of Solomon, the king and magician to whom many grimoires are attributed. Other temples had similar pillars in the ancient magical world. The pillars in Solomon's temple, named Boaz and Jachin, and described as being made of brass, became the black and white pillars of Western occultism as found in Freemasonry and popularized in tarot. That is why many traditions, including the Temple of Witchcraft, place a black candle on the left and a white candle on the right of our formal altars, very important, to evoke the presence of the gateway. Here, a veil often separates the front gate of the pillars from the Holy of Holies found on the other side of the veil, the inner sanctum of the temple. The veil is a representation of the veil between the worlds, speaking to the veil of Isis that separates visible nature from the invisible mystery of supernature. Isis is the goddess that embodies both nature and the mystery within nature. Now, I like that he mentioned putting a black candle on the left and a white candle on the right of your altars, because I'm going to tell people this, is that it's good to do that on your altar. That what that means is that balance will happen. Okay. To prevent things from falling to the extremes of either do that setting of the black and the white candle on your altar, that way it will bring balance to your spell. What do you think?
Just about every religion has some form of pillars. Islam in the Quran has, I think it's like 7, if I remember correctly, 5 to 7. Witchcraft has 5, with a pentagram and everything. Yeah. Dealing with the elements and all that stuff. Then you have the 9 from the regular biblical. So, I mean, if we're talking Eastern or Western philosophy, having that balance isn't a bad thing. You just don't want overabundance of clutter that can hinder it. But yeah, it is a good thing.
Yeah, that is right. It's good to
understanding each pillar is something that will benefit just about anyone that gets into it. So yeah,
definitely. Now let's move on. Let's go all the way to page 154. We're going to jump ahead here, getting through the book. Now on page 154, I'm going to go down to the 3rd paragraph where it says, now take that model. I'm going to start to read this paragraph here. It says, remember that both the mind and the universe are described as a hologram. They have much in common. Our universe on every level is the mind of the divine creative being. Everything in it is a thought that the divine has created, just as you do with your daydreams and visualizations. Just as you create, the divine mind creates, showing us that the nature of the universe is very mental. Therefore, the universe and everything in it responds to thoughts because it is composed of the thoughts of the divine. If the divine created us and everything else as a thought, and we are capable of creating our own thoughts, then they too are divine and filled with power. The universe and everything in it will respond to our thoughts. Thoughts invested with energy becomes reality. This is magic. And again, we touched on that early. And, thoughts are very, again, focused and intent. People do it all the time. I just thought that would be a great paragraph to bring it up, even though I think we already had touched on it. Anything you want to add to that?
I mean, even if you want to talk thoughts, I mean, let's take Aleister Crowley for an example. Do what they will shall be the whole of the law. Okay. If you've already deemed it by speaking it, have your thoughts not already been spoken before you even speak the words?
Yeah. You know,
It's like thinking of creating something, and like say a serpent, okay, on a cane,
yeah.
okay, and all of a sudden you go out and you make it. You've already thought of it, therefore you've created it.
Mm-hmm.
So you fulfilled your will.
Yeah. And again, it's become a thought form on the astral plane, and then it becomes physical as you decide to act on that thought form and then
The
bring it into the
microcosm
physical plane.
to the
There it
macro.
is. Yeah, exactly. Now, now the next page, I'm not going to have you turn to this because it's just one quick sentence, and I'm just going to read it. It's on page 208, and Christopher says, the best protection is having a defensive strategy where everyone wins. Okay, now I'm going to say why that's a good thing. Yeah, there is a time for magical self-defense, and a time when, you know, if someone's threatening your life, obviously, you know, you have a right to defend yourself magically. But then again, there's those situations where you don't have to get worked up and say, oh, I want so-and-so to die. I want so-and-so to die over something petty when you know, take time to pause and look at it. A strategy where everyone wins. You know, if you're constantly in a curse war with somebody, you're going to have to keep putting more energy on that. Whereas that energy could have been best used other places. Now, of course, like I said, we have a right to defend ourselves, and there's a time for battle. But that shouldn't be on the top list of things to do. That should be like, you know, plan B, plan C, whatever. You know what I mean? Right. If you do spells where, you know, everyone just gets along, it just fits so much better. What do you think?
Well,
less energy wasted.
Exactly. I mean, there are things that you can do that will not waste your energy. I look at an amulet, you know, a talisman, things that you carry with you. For an example, let's say, for an example, a griscris bag or a mojo bag, whatever you want to call it, filled with certain stones that will defend against negativity, things that will absorb it for future use, for redirecting. Now, even if you want to get into, say, for an example, sigilliums, you can do protection, reversal, wardings, stuff like that, things that will keep you safe. So you don't have to sit there and worry about what if, like we were talking earlier, you know?
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and go, I wonder if I'm going to get attacked today.
No,
if somebody attacks you, it's literally up to you to let it affect you or not. But when it comes down to it, there are magical things that you can do.
There is. And again, I bring back to the emphasis of working on yourself and developing yourself magically and having things around you react better. And it could be it could even be something as simple as writing symbols on your clothing and then wearing like a coat or something over it. They don't know what symbols are underneath. And when
you can brain your flesh with tattoos. It's very potent. You know, what was it on TikTok? I was sitting there scrolling down. There was 3 of them. One was the Eye of Horus, the evil eye, or the protecting eye, if you will. The was it the Phoenix and Anubis, if you will. 3 of the most potent protection items in Egyptian mythology that you can brand yourself with. Just out of an example. Another one is you can create, if we're self-improving each other, you know, of ourselves through self-mastery and working on the techniques to, say, for an example, let's go with E.A. Coetting. In the works, I want to say it's the Works of Darkness or Baneful Magic was the name of the book. In the complete works, it was on page 197 to page 200. He spoke about energy raising, psionics. Okay, it's like radionics and stuff like that. But just think about the energy that you can raise around you. It's attaching itself to your aura, right? It's attaching to your soul. So if somebody's lashing out, let's say a baneful spirit, with that soul, with that amount of power that you've raised, not consume it.
Mhm.
Therefore, eliminating that threat.
Interesting. Yeah, it's been a while since I remember having those books back in the day, going through them, but there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think those were the only two good books that he actually put out, but they had a lot of occult.
I think those are the only two I actually read from
Yeah.
the complete works.
I couldn't get into the other ones. And Kendall, what was his name? Kendall Connor.
Yeah.
Or Connor Kendall. And then with that other one, Dante Abiel.
Mhm.
Their books were too similar.
I never read their books. I never got into them.
I'd recommend it. They actually got the same things in there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, most of it, anyways. There's a few alternatives to it, but differences wise. But for the most part, it read just like the same thing.
Right.
But yeah, these things you can do to ward yourself against any form of attack, so you don't have to worry about it. There's a lot that you can do, and that's just a small little percentage of it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But see, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can get creative as far as making it so that everybody wins. Again, so you don't have to constantly be putting energy out and out and out. So it's war is not good. Especially for countries, war is not good if it's a common thing. It's not.
One of the things,
time and its place.
I've known over the last 2 years at least 5 people who have taken out lawsuits against my former employer since I left a couple weeks back, and they're still wrapped up in the court system today. The ironic part is I just simply faded off into the background. I said nothing. For 1 week, I said nothing. I showed up, turned in the key, turned in the paper, notification, I'm done, and I left.
You just went about your life.
Exactly. Well, here's the kicker. Number one, it shows you're not going to bring yourself down to their level. But by saying nothing and becoming invisible, number two, they're going to go out hiring so many people, which they did, by the way. They hired 6 people to replace me. Not joking, 6 people. Couldn't believe it. I thought it was funny as all hell. I didn't realize I did that much. But anyways, yeah, so it's interesting to see that they had to go out and hire 16 people. Now, the question is, how many of them are going to put up with that abuse? How many of them are going to stick around after a week? Okay? You're going to be months down the road, and you're screwing with them because you said nothing. Yeah. You've done nothing.
There's great power in silence.
I should have treated this person better. I should have promoted that person. Or I should have just acknowledged that person on a much more, honorable perspective, if you will, view-wise, because they're never going to find another worker like me. My nephew's former job, they're hiring people left and right for the position that he held, and they don't stick around. Nobody wants that position. Nobody wants my position. But you disappear, you say nothing, and as you said, silence is golden.
It is.
It's more power because they don't know how to attack you. They don't know what to do because you remain silent. Another form of protection.
It works the same way in the world of sales. I mean, if you make your sales pitch to somebody and then you don't keep on them, you make your sales pitch, you look them in the eye, and then quiet. And then chances are most of the time they'll say, okay, but you have to have that period of silence and stay quiet. Don't say nothing. And then most likely they'll give in and say, okay, I'll buy it. So it works. There's all different ways to look at silence and its advantages in life.
Exactly.
You know, and I learned that from a psychology book. I think it was like, it wasn't even a magic book, but like attracts like. You know, these are all interrelated.
Observation. Marcus Aurelius. Meditation.
Now let's go to page 264. We're getting towards the end of the book. There's not too much left here. Yeah, page 264, and we're going to go to the third paragraph down. Now, it says, the etheric realm is the one most closely associated with the physical. Anything with a physical body has an etheric template, a duplicate, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The first edge of the aura closest to the human body is the etheric body, providing the energetic and structural blueprint for matter. The astral plane is the level that people are usually very interested in. The astral plane is a plane of shape and form, but not matter. It is said that everything physical has an astral counterpart, but not everything astral has a physical counterpart. The astral echoes the physical plane, but is not bound by the same sense of space in the physical, so no one can use it as a medium to connect to physical locations, as in remote viewing. I think we had discussed that already. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, let's put it to some deities in this one.
All right.
Lamashtu, one of Lilith's, or one of Eve's many sisters. She was vampiric, right? Mesopotamian. She was renowned for her appetite, if you will. Her greatest weakness was her balance factor, Pazuzu. When the balance gets out of hand, and in the factor of, say, Lamashtu, then Pazuzu can come in and balance that factor out and make it all right. Okay? Now, many stories in Egyptian mythology shows Ra murdering Osiris, right? Now, don't you find it interesting that instead of attacking Ra directly, which would have been suicidal for Isis, she turned to Anubis and became associated with witchcraft, necromancy. She learned the rites to bring somebody back to the dead, from the dead, in this case, Osiris. Look at Thor and Loki in Norse mythology. The balance factor, one's chaotic, the other one's balanced. Power, weakness. Same exact thing. So when you're thinking of this particular perspective, there is a counteraction to anything and everything that you do. You just have to look for it.
Yeah, and also that ties in with the story that you had just said, is that there's also the option to negotiate as well. That opens a world of possibilities. See, some people think, oh, I see this method, I see that method, I see that method. Why not contact a deity or any spirit really, and just say, hey, look, you know, what about this and that? You know, you can negotiate. They may say yes, or they may, you know, give another alternative. But that world, that opens up a world of possibilities to where there's not just this road and that road, but there could be many roads. You just have to ask. You just have to open your mouth up and ask.
Matthew 7, for an example, I want to say it's Matthew 7, 7 and 8, where it says, knock and I will answer, seek and you will find, ask and it shall be given. Same thing applies with any deity. It doesn't matter if it's a demon, Loa, Orisha, or Jinn, even your ancestors.
Yeah,
you just,
yeah. And that applies not just to magic, but in life in general. I mean, let's say you're at a job. Let's say you start a job and you say, well, how much does that position pay? Well, it pays this much more. And then you just kind of just start asking people, well, how do I get trained for that? Who do I talk to where I can know that how to do that? And they'll chances are 9 times out of 10 they'll point you in the right direction. But then you see people who have been there for like 20 years and they didn't even bother asking. Why hasn't there? Yeah.
The ironic part about that is when I was still employed by Duncan, I was out walking my dogs, and one of them is a registered ESA, emotional support for my son's mother. Okay. We came across a woman, complete wreck. All right. Now, the ironic part is 1 week after I left Duncan, I went to McDonald's with my son after school, after he got out of school. And it was funny because of the fact that there was that woman. And she let me know that I didn't even ask if they were hiring. I didn't even say anything. I wasn't even looking to go back into the corporate world.
Right.
She said, by the way, this place is hiring $3 more than what I was being paid at Duncan. And they're looking for shift leaders and above, even that part-time work. All because I had helped her out. That one act of kindness with an emotional support animal made her day.
Well, it goes like we were talking about earlier on you know, doing Magic to where everybody wins. That's another, that can open up opportunities rather than you just keep fighting with somebody. You can make new connections.
But I went to those that I work with, and I said, well, this went down today. You got my son's mother asking if I want to go back to work in that way, or what are my plans to do. Following day, I was sitting down there at Duncan on Main Street, a different branch of the same owner. My former general manager comes in, and I told him we were talking about it, and he had let me know that the paperwork was ready. And I said, he said, you know, people are missing you. All the work that you did, they're missing you. I said nothing. I said, well, I guess it's a good thing I left on good terms. Basically letting him know that if I ever decide to come back, I'll talk to him. I won't go back. But you see the point.
Yeah.
That door is open. That window is open because he was letting me know, hey, we appreciated everything you did, but people are missing you. Basically trying to say, hey, come on back. Are you sure you want that door to close? He wanted me to come back because he was hurting and he knew it. Me? I just simply said, well, good thing I left on good terms with you, with the company. Also leaving that door open because you never know what the future holds.
Very true.
And that's the point of what he just said in this, what you just read here is, and what we've basically covered in this entire book so far is attraction. Like versus like, hate versus hate, the balance factor. There's always that balance. And I tell my apprentices all the time, as there is a balance factor. You get, if you're out of whack, bring yourself back into that focal point. Balance, ground yourself. Many people don't realize this. So yeah, that speaks truth.
It does. It does. Okay, so we'll go to page 282. Actually, I'll just go ahead and read this since it's just a few sentences. So page 282, it says, historically, the gods of an existing religion become the demons of the conquering religion. That's been pretty well documented. And then it says, and this is for testing spirits, it says, a spirit that means harm cannot exist in the vibration of love. You can use a banishing pentagram and ask all spirits who are not in perfect love and perfect trust to be banished now. If that spirit remains, then you can work with it. The protection techniques in chapter 9 are great preparation before working with any spirit. And that's important because you will have spirits who masquerade as something else to try to deceive you. Do you agree with that?
I do. You consider any given system, let's go with Let's go with the Solomantic practices.
Mhm.
There are certain seals that allow you to speak to a demon, for example, and according to these scripts, the demon cannot lie to you. If you go to the Grand Grimoire, for an example, then let's say, for an example, the Rod of Power, you can threaten that being with eternal damnation if it lies to you or doesn't show up. But if you look at where these texts come from, they're written by Christian ministers, as in the Catholics. And if you actually take the time to go back into the ancient scrolls, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'll see where, say, for example, Belial was the leader of the sons and daughters of darkness. That's in the scroll of Amrit, just out of an example. Against Michael, the leader of the sons and daughters of light. You go into, let's say, for example, the Necronomicon by Simon. Okay. Tiamat is considered to be the dragon of chaos, right? But yet her third generation child, Marduk, became the ruler of the 9 Celestials and defeated her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You go into Zoroastrianism, you see the same thing. Go into Catholicism, let's go back, say, for an example, 1,000 years ago. Let's go with how the names have been corrupted. Let's go with, for an example, Michael. In Sanskrit, means face of love. In cuneiform, it means collector of souls. And today, in Hebrew, which is the Hebrew terminology of that particular angelic being, is he who is like God. Okay? You look at Asmodeus, you see the same thing in how he became a being of fire. Okay, within the jinn, for an example. In the book of Tobit, he is seen as a wrathful and jealous and envious spirit. Okay. Later on, we saw him as a demon of lust, a demon of wrath. Why? Because he was associated with the murders of 7 out of the 8 brothers. The last brother was the one that married the woman that, the other brothers were married to, and Asmodeus wanted it. So you see somebody made of fire, supposedly born in hell itself. Now he's considered to be a full-fledged demonic king. You see how it changed.
No, yeah. And you're talking about the status of them changed by a conquering
correct
ruling.
So basically, the stories are not created by those that have conquered. The stories are created by the victors.
And this is why it's good to have personal relationships with spirits. Not just go off of what people say, not just go off of what the books or lore says. When you actually have worked with and know the energy of a spirit, then you can say for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. For example, if you're working with your ancestors, it'll be calm, collected. It would be almost like a dream state, if you will. But if you're working with, say, a being from, let's say, Gehenna, the old term for hell, and a lot of people don't separate the difference between a holding cell and an actual place of fire and brimstone, if you will. And yes, that's actually right there in the Bible.
Well, also the fact that you may get along better with a certain spirit than somebody else does.
Exactly.
Let's say someone, okay, well, I had a bad experience with that. I don't recommend call. But then your personality is much different. You have a different approach. Your energy is different than that person. So therefore, maybe your energy might sync better with that spirit. Not everyone is going to be satisfied working with the same spirits. No, it's kind of like, at a workplace or at school, you make friends. Not everybody has the same friends. You may get along with these group of friends better than these group of friends. That guy might not recommend hanging out with that guy, but You know, you do and he doesn't. You know, it's all
You prefer
subjective. You know, not only as far as the magic itself, but the alignments and the that you make, the relationships you make. That's going to be unique to you as well.
And that's one of the big things, is because a lot of people, when they get into demonolatry, they don't realize the intensity that is brought forth. That's just who these beings are. They're intense.
Right.
It's like dealing with an Aries who's passionate, you know? A lot of people are like, I don't know how to handle this person.
Yeah.
You know, he or she is like way out
Some
there.
people will like that energy, some people won't.
Yeah.
It
And then
depends
you
on
got the Geminis that are quick to anger. And all of a sudden, the next moment, they're like calm as can be. You know, same exact thing with a Leo or a Pisces. You know, you just different connections.
And not to mention the different spirits have they vibrate well with a certain constellation.
Exactly.
And somebody, another deity will. You know,
right.
That constellation might correspond to them, and maybe that's you or someone that you get along with who has that same sign. But yeah, in moving on, I'm going to go to page 284, and I'm not going to have you change to this one either. It's just a couple sentences, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. And it's on making contact. Page 284, it says, "We know we can change our vibration through intent. Through intent, we can tune into our guides, even when we are not seeking direct guidance, but only their presence to subtly guide us. And this is an example. I ask my highest and best guidance to be present. I ask to vibrate in harmony with the highest and best guidance and understand all messages given to me." And he advises doing that before you do some of the exercises. And that's, again, say things, you know, do things, make affirmations, you know, say things out loud to your higher self if you need to, but you got to open your mouth to open your options. And a lot of people don't know that. It's just as simple as just speaking things into existence, making affirmations, contacting your higher self and saying things. And that can make a world of difference.
But it's another thing to actually take action and do it.
Yeah. Again, faith without works is dead.
Correct.
And yeah, we're almost done here. Let's go to page 313. Page 313, bottom paragraph. It says, "Just as each chakra expresses imbalance through a range of physical and spiritual issues, so too do the sides of the body give clues. Illness on the left side often deals with the arena of home, family, and emotional life. The left is considered more receptive, feminine, and intuitive. Illness or injury on the right side usually falls in the domain of work, activity, and public life. The right is considered more active and masculine." So yeah, that is, a lot of people talk about, well, this means that chakra is out of alignment, but they don't understand that the directions left and right have a big significance also pertaining to your illness. Would you agree?
I do. And if people don't really take a look at the particular chakra, it would be like looking at your kundalini, your meridians. You know, certain things could relate to cardiovascular failure. For an example, let's go with heart disease, or because your heart chakra is not fully open, it's not healthy, it's not balanced. You know, so I mean, let's say for an example, if you draw, I'm going to dumb it down so it's actually easy for people to understand here.
Yeah.
If you take a sheet of paper and you draw a line, okay, straight through the center of it, and then you do the wavy, okay, when you're walking that center line, you're balanced. If you go above, you're more into the positive, and then the next you'll be down below into, say, the negative. So if you're one side more than the other, then you are effectively out of balance. And therefore you're not well grounded. You're not in the best mind state, if you will. But if you walk that simple line dead center, right where everything connects, you're grounded, you're focused, you're disciplined, you're taking care of yourself, you're connected to your three bodies.
Mhm.
All things are going to go good for you.
Agreed.
But it's,
And
yeah.
and there may be times, there are going to be times when you need to step out into the positive or lower, negative.
Correct.
There's a time and a place for that. But ultimately, the focus and the intent, should be balance, is what
Right.
what it leads to.
Which goes back
You
to the whole breathing exercises.
like we give the example, someone's trying to kill you, you have a right to defend yourself. If someone's attacking you, obviously your intent with that is to get back to balance, but you
Yep.
have to explore that other side in order to get there. Now,
Any
these last
martial artist would tell you it's all about energy manipulation. You're using your opponent's energy against them.
Yeah, and they have names like chi and different names for manipulating energy. They're all talking about the same thing, especially martial arts.
If somebody throws a punch at you, for an example, you can either stand there and get hit, or you can block it and just pull them forth using their own momentum against them and take them down.
Mm-hmm.
Flip them, whatever you want to call it, whatever movement you want to do, technique wise. But
yeah,
you're basically using their own momentum against them. That's basically what you're doing from defending yourself.
I will say that, concerning energy work and working with energy and manipulating energy, it is beneficial to listen to martial artists talk about that, because
exactly
it pertains the same way to the magical world. You might learn something new listening to Eastern philosophers talking about martial arts and their strategies.
Like Tai Chi, Wai Gong, or Shaolin Kung Fu, for an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Now these next two, these last two, I'm not going to have you turn to them. They're just a couple sentences, and I'm just going to say them right now. One of them it's on page 343. It says, "There is no judgment in the witch's world, but instead cause and effect." Again, it pertains to what we were talking about. It's necessary to go positive or negative as long as your intent is balanced. And again, cause and effect. There is no judgment. And then the last one I wanted to mention is, karma does affect us, but we are never fated to experience events beyond our control. And especially, I think that, we do agree to go into certain, in this body and throughout this life, and but there's nothing that we can't handle that we're going to go through. Now I've heard religions talk about that, but that applies to us just as much. What do you think?
Now, there's a couple of different perspectives here. The first is, let's go into voodoo for an example. Let's go with Haitian voodoo. If you're practicing Bokor or Caplata, depending if you're male or female, a lot of individuals will say, well, you're not initiated, therefore you can't practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here it is. Don't you find it interesting that a Hungan can easily become a Bokor and a Bokor become a Hungan?
Mm-hmm.
It all comes down to the spiritual work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say, for an example, you're practicing Boko and you're helping a client. You've been hired to do a ritual for that client. The karma, as you read, does not apply to the practitioner doing the work, because you're doing it for the client. Therefore, that karma and all the effects, painful or positive, would go back and reflect upon that client. Okay, so that's two possibilities right there. 3, if you're following a path, let's say necromancy, there's the good and evil concept is just that. It's a concept that people choose to follow.
Mm-hmm.
But what if, say, for an example, magic is just gray? There's no black or white magic. Magic's magic.
I would go with that definition, yeah.
Therefore, what you sow is what you reap.
That's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately, I think, when it comes down to, all these different religions and spiritual practices talking about, a judgment day. I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. Did you remain balanced? You know, like in Egyptian mythology, balancing the heart. You know what I mean? On
Indonesian Yukon, practicing Santet. 6 to 7 different types of magic right there. Going to Brujeria, for an example, you got 5 different types of magic that you can perform. Going to Satanism, demonolatry, you're dealing with what, 3? Now let's go to Christianity. There's only 1. Most people think there's 1, but yet there's 2.
Well, there's so many different branches of Christianity. It's just crazy.
But if you follow their history, they speak about love and walking right for Jesus, right?
Right.
But yet, what are they doing? They're doing nothing but hate. So there's actually 2 forms. They're destroying each other. They're bashing each other. But they're also, if you're a part of their church, they're doing the same thing. And at the same time, building each other up.
Yeah. I get what you mean.
Yeah. So in essence, if Satan cast out Satan, then his house is divided, right? So you can't serve God and mammon.
Well, one thing I had a problem with when I was a Christian back in the day, looking at all these different denominations, is, it says in the Bible, the Holy Spirit will lead you into all truth. They all claim they're being led by the Holy Spirit, but yet they're saying, no, my version is the truth and yours isn't. And then they must not be being led by that Holy Spirit.
But yeah, if you go into chapter 7, book of Matthews, verses 7 and 8, I think. No, 13 and 14, I think it is. Where it says the roads are many, but the path is many, but the gate is narrow. Basically meaning all roads are leading to the same place. So if that's the case,
if you're in alignment with your true will, with your highest self. Now, some are not. And that applies not only to Christianity, but that applies to witchcraft as well, to the occult, all forms of the occult. There's some that are in alignment with their true will and some that are not, but those who are, their many paths lead to the same endpoint. So yeah, definitely.
It's like using the term warlock. Most people go by the Welsh or Scottish terminology, the Anglo-Saxon of oath-breaker, betrayer, liar. Okay, but yet if you actually take a look at it, it's no different than a hexa, strega, an eshi, an agi, a necromancer, shaman, witch, warlock, male, female counterparts, the balance.
Very
but
good.
It comes down to your perspective.
And that's what it comes down to, is balance at the end. Now, in closing, very, very good book. Anything Intertemple of Witchcraft by Christopher Pensack. Anything you want to add to this before we end the video, Michael?
Well, I can't think of anything off the top of my head outside of give it a good lengthy try before you do anything. I would say 6 months to a year before you decide to go into a different path.
Yeah, definitely. And let's keep in mind that this is a volume 1 in a series of books. There's volume 2, volume 3, and so forth. And we'll get into those later on. But volume 1, pick it up to get a good foundation in witchcraft, and then you can build off of that. This is the perfect book for that. And I'll have a link below in the video description that you can get this off Amazon if you want to go ahead and check it out. I highly recommend it. So does Hyson. But also, I wanted to mention your Facebook group that you started. What's it called again?
My Facebook group?
Yeah.
Oh, that was can't think of it offhand. It was actually a group that I was a part of back in 2021. I was added as an admin, and then the other admin just got up and disappeared.
Shadows of the Warlocks. Shadows of the Warlocks. So if people don't know, Michael Hyson now has his own Facebook group called Shadows of the Warlocks, and I'm in that group, and Michael's posting a lot of good stuff in there. So I'll have the link below in the video description along with his other social media links. Go ahead and give those a follow. Michael Hyson, thank you again for your time and coming on. and having a great conversation.
Anytime.
And
It's always
everyone,
enlightening.
yes, always good having you on. And everyone who's watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.